Good morning, everybody. Hopefully you can see me. Trying to get things organized here this morning. Okay. So, after speaking to a lovely friend yesterday, she encouraged me to start speaking out about what is actually happening in farming right now when it comes to UK farming, and to try and bring awareness to, well, whether it's other farmers who are in the same position as we all are in, or whether it's to people who are consumers and who actually have a vested interest in food security within our country. Food security has long been an issue because it would seem that government aren't really that bothered by it. So they're not really worried. And I guess that's because as long as they are able to buy food in their local supermarkets, then the problem is not theirs. However, this year we are seeing a different kind of year, and we're going to see a different kind of year. And we can blame climate change, or we can, say it's an act of God, or whatever it is that is being bandied around right now. But the fact is that there is an issue, or there is going to be an issue with the amount of food being produced. So on the news this morning, they are saying that some farms will not have a harvest this year, which is the first time since the Second World War. Now, that kind of seems relevant to me, since after the Second World War, we nearly starved, or even in fact, during the Second World War, we nearly starved. And this has kind of always been the driving force of many farmers, is that we needed to produce food for the people in our country. Now the population has grown since the Second World War, so we now have more people that we need to provide food for. But it really isn't taken that seriously, I don't feel. And this whole climate change stuff, is it real, or is it just people trying to make more money off of things like electric cars, by giving us more fear about the future? Oh my gosh, if we're going to have such climate change that we're going to all burn up, that's not great, is it? If we're all living in this kind of place of fear. Now, for me, and for us on our farm, I've kind of seen this coming for over 12 years. And it was back when I was at college and I was doing my degree in rural business management that I started to see farming through a different light and through a different kind of telescope, you could say, because I was looking at the future of farming. I was looking at what was going to potentially happen in the future of farming. And it got such a strong, it had such a strong place in my heart that we had to change something, that we had to start looking at things differently. We had to start, taking care of our soil has been like the main thing that we have changed. Taking care of the soil and not having to rely on man-made products so much. So we no longer use artificial fertilizer. We are minimizing, we don't use herbicides and pesticides anyway, really, only the odd things in the past, but not like a constant thing. And we are reducing our use of medicines within our sheep and cattle flock. So I kind of knew, I had this passion inside of me that we had to change, because if we didn't, then we were going to end up here in this position, and we were going to end up in a place where we're like, what the heck are we going to do? Now, for me, the way I'm seeing this whole reigning situation is, no, it's not ideal. However, you can take it two ways. We can either go, right, this is it for us as farmers. It's going to take us out if we don't have any. So we're seeing issues in the lamb crop this year as well. So we've had some farms have been really hit with Smollenberg. The earlier lambing people have been really hit with really bad Smollenberg, and it has meant that most of their crops have died, which is not good. It is not good on the soul when stuff like that happens, because we as farmers feel it, and we feel the effects of things dying. We feel the effects of what the weather is currently creating at the moment. So farmers are stogging through fields to try and make sure their animals are fed. They are, having to keep animals indoors longer, so we are buying in more straw. We're having to feed them longer indoors, so that's causing more pressure on things like silage, which is fine. We've got enough, but there are many farmers who haven't got any more than for this season. And looking forward, if the rain continues to rain and we don't have any sunshine, the quality of the grass that the animals are going out on isn't good either, and that can cause issues such as staggers, and mineral deficiencies within the animals. So it can actually cause a problem when they eventually get out as well, because the sunshine just hasn't helped the grass. And so we are in a really interesting position as farmers. So the other side is, we can look at that our farm. So for us, we are a drought prone farm. So that means we have struggled with water supply for so many years. It's unreal. Where if it was dry all winter and then into the spring, we end up with a spring drought. So our water supply is completely diminished to the house. So we then have to rely on a borehole, and it can often look like a dust bowl around us, like literally everything can be dead, and the cows are eating fresh air, and as long as they have got water, they seem to do okay. They seem to hold their own in a drought. We can also look at it that our farms are being rested, and we can also look at it that the rain that actually comes down does have a certain amount of good stuff in it. And I think we've forgotten that, it does have a certain amount of nitrogen in it, does have a certain amount of other vitamins and, or not vitamins, it does have a certain amount of micronutrients that come down from the actual sky. So we could look at it as like mass fertilization. We've got stuck on this idea that in order to farm, we must use bagged fertilizer or liquid fertilizer or whatever. And we've forgotten the fact that actually when it rains, it can actually be a kind of fertilizer for the ground. And, for us particularly, I want to just ask you, do you know how, drought places are formed? Do you know how deserts are formed? Deserts are formed when we don't take care of our soil. Basically, when we're not taking care of the soil and we're not putting back into the soil, we're not resting the soil, we just keep taking and taking and taking and taking, we end up causing the drought. Then what happens when you've got bare soil? So like I've actually seen this happen on our farm. When we have bare soil and it's like dust everywhere, it drives the rain clouds away. So because we're in the middle of two moors, can you guess where that drives the rain clouds to? It will drive the rain clouds to the moors. So we are actually, there's an element of how we can help sustain weather patterns. We can actually help create different weather patterns. For us down here in Devon and Cornwall, we are basically flanked by the sea on both sides. So we should be getting rain, and that warm rain. However, we're having this mass amount of rain right now, and it could genuinely be because there's been an upset balance. So a conversation I've been having recently is that when I was 14 or 15, our well ran dry, and I remember it clearly because it was loud. The pump was right next to my bedroom, and all of a sudden I was like, what is that noise? And I woke up and I was like, I actually don't know what that noise is. And my dad went to look and the well had run dry. That was the first time in 15 years. So I'm 35. So you do the maths. So then we had to dig a borehole, which is about 150 feet deep and obviously taps into a deeper water supply. And then whenever our well runs dry, we flick over to the borehole. What's very interesting right now is the guy that came to do our borehole the other day, he looked in and he said, wow, the water is actually higher in the borehole than it was when we put it in. So basically, we could take water from the top if we wanted to, rather than pumping it up, which is what we've had to do in the past. And so the water underneath the ground has increased. So what does that look like for us? For me, I'm not really sure, because I can't remember it in my lifetime. So because, you don't pay attention to these things when you're like 14 or 15, do you? It's just not something you want to pay attention to. But right now I wonder, well, okay, so what does this look like, and what does this mean for us as farmers who are taking care of the soil, who are using regenerative practices, and who are literally focusing on how to make sure that when future weather patterns, silly things happen, we can literally sustain it. So for us right now, we are fortunate enough, our cows have calved in okay. They've calved in really good. Our lambs have our sheep, we've only got 50 sheep now. We used to have 500. They have lambed really well considering the weather, and they seem to be upholding themselves in the field, because we have little fields with lots of hedges, and because we are dry underfoot, it pays off. For those that are on wet farms, I completely understand, though, that it's a completely different kettle of fish for you. But I want to ask you the question, is there a way that you could be looking at things differently, so that if this was to happen again, you can actually either, just sustain yourself, or in fact get better after the situation? Now, I predict that we will actually, for us here, our ground will actually have benefited from all this rain, and that, the underground water supplies will have really been refreshed and refilled, and this means then our plants have more water to dig into, and so we'll see less of um the less of the, when the sun comes out and it dries really up, that it will just, the whole farm will go to dust, purely because we've been regrowing our soils and planting deeper plants. So it might look like it's the end of the world and it's really raining, and what are we going to do? But if you just change that thought process and think, okay, so how do I future proof my farm? How do I make sure that when this happens, that we can, manage it, and it's not leaving everything in complete turmoil? And right now, I know if you're watching this and you're a farmer and you're in complete turmoil, I know you probably don't want to be listening to this. And I completely understand that. But I want you, after the dust has settled, I want you to literally ask yourself, how do I need to change this procedure? What do I need to do so that if it rains, if it's really sunny, whichever weather it decides to throw at us, we are able to continue growing our crops, continue lambing our sheep and calving our cows, continue having a good supply of milk? What is it that we need to do? Because there is something you can do. Every farm is different. Every farming family is different. We're all growing different things. It's not that we can replicate what we're doing on our farm, on your farm, but we can do things differently. And there is a way that you can literally start to make the farm work for you, because that's what we've been doing. My whole ethos for the last 10 years since becoming a mum was, how can I make this place work for me rather than me work for it? And so it's just that mind shift. So I hope this has been interesting for you today. If you're a farmer watching, then I'm sending you so many love and prayers right now, because I know it's hard, and I don't particularly like the rain personally. So for those who are losing animals, and my heart goes out to you, because we've been there. We've completely been there. And for any of you who have just jumped in to just see what I'm up to and on about, thank you. And just, if you know any farmers, just really try and support them, encourage them, send them a message, because it is really hard right now for them. And we have become an industry that's lone wolfing. So many farmers are just trying to do things by themselves or within their own families, and that's really hard. Thank you for listening, and I will speak to you again soon.